Hey, it is the first show of May. Well, it's not the first day of May, it's just simply the first show of May, seeing that there wasn't an episode yesterday. But, anywho, it is Wargame Wednesday, so the Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy, gang. Yes, Jeff McAleer back once again, and I am the host here at the Daily Dope, as well as the Grand Poobah of thegaminggang.com. So, yes, today is May 2nd. It's a Wargame Wednesday, so I am going to review Pendragon, the Fall of Roman Britain, from the fine folks over at GMT Games. That is what I've got on the agenda today. Plus, I've got some news as well. I had a counter that had actually stuck to my finger when I was setting things up, and I just was, starting to show off. That's why I kind of turned away to kind of flip this off of my finger here. Anyway, there was no show yesterday because somebody hacked into thegaminggang.com. I think it was a hack. Could have been a server issue. I don't know. I don't think it was a corrupted database, but the website was kind of down. It was kind of showing the header for the website and then no articles, anything like that. So I don't know. So luckily I am I wouldn't say I'm a master of website design and back end, but I know enough of it where I was able to get the site back up. It only took me a couple hours to actually get all the backups and everything else in place. So, and it's funny. I shouldn't say funny. I guess I should say I am lucky that out of the almost 8 years that I've been doing the Gaming Gang, I almost said the Daily Dope, but it's like, no, we haven't even done 100 episodes of this yet. But out of the almost 8 years of the Gaming Gang being around, I think this is the second time anybody tried to hack into us, or at least got anywhere. But this was a little worse than the first time, which was a few years back. Anyhow, I do want to point out that there is chat available. This is a live stream, although a vast majority of people watch the rendered video on YouTube. But there is chat available through YouTube. It's not on screen. That's how I keep some funky commenters away. But if you are watching live and if you have a question or a comment, or when I take a look at Pendragon a little more in depth, if you want to find out something about it, feel free to chime in. Of course, you can also just say howdy, and I will say hello right back. I'll identify you. Anywho, moving on to the news, and strangely enough, today is pretty heavy into role-playing game news. But I do want to point out the latest source book for the Savage Worlds Lankhmar setting, which is based on the famous Fritz Leiber stories, has hit Kickstarter by way of Pinnacle Entertainment. It launched yesterday and funded within its first hour. And I've got the dope. In the city of 7,000 smokes, danger lurks down every dark alley. Sinister sorcerers summon terrible forces in their crumbling towers. Treacherous rogues of the Thieves Guild prowl the Plaza of Dark Delights. Assassins from the Slayers Brotherhood work the Tenderloin District, and hunched figures skitter beneath the streets, waiting for their chance to rise. Now your party of warriors and scoundrels can expand their adventures beyond Lankhmar to the high seas of Nawan. They might venture to the Sea of Stars to confront priests of the ancient and terrible Makroth, or book passage to Rime Isle and fall prey to the Thing from Below. Savage Seas of Nawan contains everything a game master needs to create incredible tales of high sea-based adventures for Lankhmar or any savage setting. Including in the book is the Seas of Nawan, Overviews of the Inner Sea, Outer Sea, Frozen Sea, Sea of Stars, Sea of the East, and Lankmar's docks and harbors. Characters have new edges, hindrances, powers, and setting rules to deal with ships in the sea. Speaking of ships, there are statistics for the various ocean-going vessels of Naywan, setting rules, naval maneuvers, and rules for savage storms. Plus, there's even an adventure generator, a complete adventure generator for creating your own savage tales. Speaking of those tales, there are plenty of sea-based adventures in Fritz Leiber's incredible style, such as Jewel of the Deep, Queen of the Sunken Realm, Bride of the Golden Isle, and more. And of course, this supplement would not be complete without new beasts to drag your heroes from the decks of their ships to the briny depths. There is a short Kickstarter video. There is a short Pinnacle video. Wow, boy, say that 10 times fast. Which is for the Kickstarter project. So I do want to point out that you want to make sure that you own the core Savage Worlds rules, which I gotta be honest, you can get the deluxe Savage Worlds rulebook in PDF for less than $10. But you need to have that to utilize this Lankmar sourcebook. You can reserve a copy of the 96-page book, plus all backer rewards, for a $15 pledge for PDF, or snag the physical book at the $25 pledge level. Project does run through May 16th, and I want to point out, you may have noticed last week I did a review for this source book, because the way Pinnacle operates is, normally when they do a Kickstarter, the book is done. Everything's finished. The layout, everything, presentation, it's all done. They just want to see how popular it's going to be as far as doing printing up physical copies of the gaming books. And I dug it. I did dig the Savage Seas of Naywan and gave it an 8 out of 10. Because one thing I really appreciated about it was that it expanded on a lot of Fritz Leiber's stories. So it wasn't just, because there aren't a lot of Leiber stories of Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser that deal with them being at sea, where that's the main focus. Sure, there's a lot of times that they do travel by sea in various stories, but they're usually not exactly the main focus being, sailing and the adventures on, I should say, above or below the sea. So I liked how Pinnacle actually fleshed out a lot of different creatures. There's some adventures that are in there that have a real kind of Fritz Leiber vibe to them. The only thing that I kind of was a little knock on the book was, for some reason, Pinnacle doesn't want to kind of deconstruct any of the Fritz Leiber stories. They'll mention the stories, but they don't say what the stories are about. And I find it kind of funny, because if you're not familiar with Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser's stories, why would you be picking up these supplements, right? So that was a little ding that I've got against these source books, because I have looked through some of the Lankmar books now, including, obviously enough, Savage Seas of Naywan, and none of them really, kind of break down like the different stories, which I would appreciate. Anyway, but then again, I'm a huge fan of Fritz Leiber, so. But Drew Barbier, I believe that's the pronunciation, is chiming in. Hey, Drew. Yes, it's Wargame Wednesday. Woot! So, moving right along, my next news piece is something that a lot of people have been waiting for, because Fantasy Flight Games has announced the Legend of the Five Rings role-playing beginner game, which is on the horizon, and I've got the dope. The Five Rings role-playing beginner game, a new role-playing experience in the land of honor and steel. The Legend of the Five Rings role-playing beginner game allows anyone to take on the role of a samurai in Rokugan. From 4 in-depth character folios, a fully realized adventure book, a set of custom dice, a map of Rokugan, a variety of tokens, and a set of rules, including an example of play, the Legend of the Five Rings role-playing beginner game, boy that is a mouthful, gives newbies and veterans alike the perfect door to the Emerald Empire. Within the Legend of the Five Rings role-playing beginner game, you'll find a unique way to start your role-playing adventures. An updated version of the roll and keep system found in prior versions of the L5R RPG. By using the set of custom dice included in the box, you'll be able to help your characters overcome the trials ahead while informing the world around them and their inner turmoil. Take your first steps into the Emerald Empire with the Legend of the Five Rings role-playing beginner game. Between a pre-made adventure ripe with action and a set of characters that represent the best of Rokugan, yes, you guessed it, Legend of the Five Rings role-playing beginner game is the perfect introduction to Rokugan for new players and veterans alike. You can pre-order the game for $39.95. Yes, hey, Drew points out that I did pronounce his last name correctly. Cool deal. And also mentions that they've got a sick toddler. Wow, that stinks. So, well, hey, you know what? Run around, take care of what you need to do. Just turn the volume up on the show. I don't have to sit here and stare at the screen. Anyway, as far as Legend of the Five Rings role-playing game, now I was exposed to this when it was with AEG, and I think AEG did a phenomenal job with the L5R role-playing game. Yes, L5R was a bigger deal for them as a collectible card game, but the role-playing game still did extremely well. I thought the artwork was fantastic. I loved how involved people were in the RPG and in actually creating what was going on in the storyline, because it was another game that sort of had kind of a mega kind of campaign to it. There was always something going on, something changing. And that was one of the big deals with the card game, with the collectible card game, was it also had that whole sort of just campaign feel to it, and things would change with new sets of cards that came out. I know there are a lot of people who are a bit disappointed in FFG's living card game for Legend of the Five Rings. I have not seen it, but the RPG, like I said, if it can come close to what AEG did with it and the fans of the system did, I think this should be a pretty big hit. Plus, $39.95 isn't too bad for a beginner box. Sounds like there's quite a bit in it. All right, moving right along, fans of Star Realms, at least the app of Star Realms, should be happy to know that White Wizard Games has made some changes, some additions to their popular Star Realms app. And I've got the dope. Hello! That's them, that's not me. We're thrilled to announce Star Realms Arena in-app digital tournaments for the award-winning Star Realms deck building game will be available in the latest Star Realms update, which took place yesterday. We will be releasing the United Heroes expansion as part of this update. From its beginning in 2014, the Star Realms app has been a favorite for board gamers. Card gamers too. The Star Realms Arena Key features free weekly entry into an arena tournament, weekly formats to win prizes, including digital foil cards, the ability to play with Star Realms expansions without purchasing the expansions, Race to the Stars to get the Brain World Avatar. The Star Realms app is normally free, but you can get the full version for PC, Android, or iOS, or I should say and iOS, for $4.99. I've got to say that I have played Hero Realms, and myself and the gang really dug it. And we even enjoyed Epic card game, not as much as we did Hero Realms. And I have never touched Star Realms, and that is kind of the game that really put White Wizard Games on the map. So little birdie told me I'm going to get to check out the full version of the app, so I will definitely want to give that a try. All right, so as I mentioned, we're pretty heavy into role-playing game news today, and fans of Dungeons & Dragons are going to want to catch a special 3-day event, which is coming June 1st, or I should say beginning June 1st. And those living in the Los Angeles area should also take special note. Here's the dope on the Stream of Many Eyes. On June 1st through 3rd, 2018, D&D will bring tons of Twitch streamers, actors, comedians, and D&D luminaries to the Stream of Many Eyes, a 3-day live-streamed extravaganza, their words, not mine, full of cosplay, crazy sets, and amazing stories. During the Stream of Many Eyes, hashtag SomeDND, so it's yes, Stream of Many Eyes, some abbreviation. The D&D team will unveil the new adventure story coming this year and showcase extraordinary D&D live play entertainment. And it will all stream live on twitch.tv/DND. The Stream of Many Eyes starts at 4 p.m. Pacific on Friday, June 1st, with a visual tour of the studio led by host Anna Prosser Robinson and a roundtable conversation with the D&D team on the new storyline and what makes it so exciting. Dungeons & Dragons will then present live D&D play sessions with Force Grey and Dice. Force Grey and Dice Camera Action. On Saturday, June 2nd, the live stream kicks off at 10 a.m. Pacific with Sirens of the Realms. Saturday's games will feature well-known D&D gaming groups Girls Guts Glory, as well as newer groups Rivals of Waterdeep and Dark and Dicey, all previewing content from the new story. The entertainment will run all day, wrapping at 7 o'clock Pacific. 4 groups will perform on Sunday, June 3rd, beginning at 11 a.m. Pacific and streaming until 8 p.m. Games will include members of Critical Role, High Rollers, Force Grey, and the entire cast of Dice Camera Action performing together in costume for the first time. So if you are a huge fan of these D&D streaming shows, you will definitely want to watch this. If you're like me, who really doesn't care, I don't know. I'm sure I would want to check this out to see what's going on with the new adventure that's coming. Anyway, D&D fans around the world can watch all the excitement unfold on Twitch, and on Sunday only, fans in the Los Angeles area can buy tickets to watch one of the live games in person. The live ticketed experience includes a curated set tour, live performances from musicians, dancers, and stunt people, food trucks, a D&D pop-up store full of merchandise, and of course, some of your favorite gaming groups. Do want to mention, I believe, if there are still tickets available, because this news piece did come out yesterday. I would have included it on yesterday's show if there had been a show yesterday. I believe tickets are $200, and there are a limited number of them. Now, I do want to also mention that, as far as I understand, everybody who gets a ticket is going to get a bag full of D&D swag. And I can say, from my past experience, Wizards of the Coast has always taken care of like the press at conventions really nicely. I've got like a Messenger's D&D bag, and we got a bunch of books that were in the bag and stuff like that. So I know $200 is a pretty good chunk of change. I'm hoping this is all going to charity. I don't know. I have no idea. But I would think for your $200, you're probably going to get a pretty cool experience. And once again, don't email me because I said I don't care about the live stream shows. They're just not my thing. Enjoy them all you want. There can be a million of them out there. Just, enjoy. I just don't watch. Anyway, I should point out, speaking of Dungeons and Dragons, all through the month of May, you can save up to 66% on nearly 10,000, yes, you heard that correct, Dungeons and Dragons titles through DriveThruRPG. Yep, I'm serious. There's plenty to be excited about because I shouldn't say nearly, I believe every edition of D&D is covered, and you can score such recent hotness such as the Kobold Press Midgard line, which I've been taking a peek at, and it's pretty cool. Probably see a review of that soon enough. Anyway, the sale runs the entire month, so you can save up to 66%. So that is some pretty big savings. But don't wait till the last minute. Start cracking so you can save some serious ducats, folks. All right, so anyway, well, on the topic of saving you money, I have a news piece kind of put together for this, but I should point out, VictoryPointGames.com has a big sale going on through May 4th. So it's not all month long, but you still got a few days to take advantage of it. You can save 30% on offerings from their selection of card games, including Bounty Town, For the Crown, and all its expansions. High Treason, The Trial of Louis Riel, I Say Holmes 2nd Edition, which is fairly new. Knockout, which I've got actually sitting around over here. It's actually kind of a cool boxing game. Trifecta, and more. So once again, go visit VictoryPointGames.com. Save yourself 30% on a bunch of their card games. I would assume that we're probably talking about more than just those games. Don't know. Maybe those are just some that VPG pointed out in the email that they had shot me. All right. So anyway, so that is the news for today. I will have news about the Kickstarter to kind of keep the gaming gang around. On Monday, I will have some more details. It is going to launch on the 15th. I don't know. I'm kind of embarrassed by the whole thing. I don't know. Hey, well, we'll see what happens. Anyway, so before I jump into Pendragon, and I do want to point out, I'm just reviewing Pendragon. I am not going to go through a huge how to play or a playthrough. I'm going to review it, and I will explain why I'm not going to do all that other stuff with the game in just a minute. But if you're wondering, hey, what's cooking not only for the rest of the week, but maybe next week, I always like to give you, you folks out there, a little bit of a heads up what's cooking. So tomorrow, I am going to review Torg Eternity! Yes, the new edition of Torg. This is the core rulebook from Ulysses North America. So I will have a review of this. I'm going to give you a hint. I really do dig it. I dig the concept. There's a couple of little things that I'm sort of like, I don't know. Anyway, but it's going to be vastly positive. It's not like, don't buy this crap. But it's not going to be like, oh yes, everything's perfect. Like some reviewers out there is like, every game is phenomenal. It's great. It's the greatest thing. Every game blows your mind more than the game you played before. No, it doesn't happen. Anyway, but that will be tomorrow. So on Friday, let me move this stuff out of the way. I had a stack of stuff all over the place here. Plus, I've got the box from Pendragon and stuff all over the place, too. On Friday, I'm going to take a look at Barbarian Battlegrounds from my friends over at Greenbrier Games. I am also going to find out if this is coming to Kickstarter or if this is going to be out soon. I don't know. I have no idea. So I'm going to touch base with my friend Julie Ahern over at Greenbrier and find out. You know what? Funny enough, I know. Come on. It's floating around here someplace. Where are they? They're floating around here. Let me take a look here. There we go. Here. Speaking of Julie, So I thought this was funny, right? So in the box that Jeff Garcia from Greenbrier Games sent me Helios Expanse as well as Barbarian Battlegrounds. There's like this, sort of, it's a little bigger than a postcard. Yeah, it's about postcard size. Okay, so it shows all the various different games, right? So we got Grimslingers, Wasteland, Apocalypse, I should say, Wasteland. So it's all like kind of recent stuff from Greenbrier. So then on the back, there's this photo. Let's see if we can keep that in focus here. So this is a photo of the gang from Greenbrier. So I had to laugh. Now I think this is probably from Gen Con. And I have to laugh because, okay, so here's Jeff, right? So that's Jeff Garcia. All right, and then over here, right there, that's Teresa. And then over this way, right above the code box, that's my friend Julie, right? Okay, so of course they're all employees of Greenbrier Games. Obviously, because Jeff and Teresa are like the owners, right? Okay, and Julie's an employee. Now, there's a bunch of people in this shot here that don't work for Greenbrier Games. They were just like volunteers, like dead center. This guy here, because I interviewed him, he was doing a game that's still not out. I interviewed him like 2 years ago. This kind of like tall character right here in the red shirt. He doesn't work for him. He doesn't work for Greenbrier. It's like, what's he doing? Come on, Greenbrier gang. Take a new photo. Sort of like, here's Julie, who's a big part of Greenbrier, off in the corner, pretty much almost covered up by the quick code. And all these other people were just volunteers hanging around like dead center. Looks goofy. All right, anyway. It's a live show. You know, it's just whatever pops in my head. On Monday, because I was going to do this on yesterday's show, I will be reviewing Reanimator, the board game from Dynamite Entertainment and Lynn Vander Studio. And then on Tuesday, I'm going to crack open and do an unboxing for Helios Expanse, which is supposed to be like a 4X sort of game that does not take a whole lot of time to play. So it's kind of like a 4X science fiction game that you should be able to complete in, I think, like an hour, maybe hour and a half. All right, so moving right along. So I know a lot of people are going to be checking out my review of Pendragon, Fall of Rome, Fall of Rome in Britain, from GMT Games. It was published last year. It came out later in kind of like the fall. It's designed by Mark Goyenretti. Sorry, I'm sure. Oh, wait a second. What in the world is going on here? Why is this stuff showing? For crying out loud. It is not supposed to be showing all these images. Yeah, that's all that's supposed to be up there right now. It's not supposed to be doing a slideshow. Anyway, designed by Mark Goyenretti. Guessing there, folks. With development by Volko Runke. The map art is by Chechu Neto Senez. Sort of like, is it Senez or did they misspell Sanchez? Did they drop a C out of there? I don't know. The card and counter art is by Charlie Kibler and Mark Simonich. The game is for 1 to 4 players. I say it's for about ages 13 and up. That's my opinion. Maybe go a little higher even. Go 14 and up. It will play in about 4 to 6 hours, maybe even more. And carries an MSRP of $95. So let's head on over to the other camera. I've got this set up. So let's take a quick peek. There we go. Now we're getting it over. All right, so once again, there we go. It's Pendragon, the fall of Roman Britain. So, as always, space is at a premium. So I've got this. First of all, I've got the board kind of sideways, which if you're playing with 2 to 4 players, it's not going to be right straight up in front of anybody anyway. It's like you're going to have 3 players that somehow it's not going to be straight. All right, so we're going to kind of take a quick peek around the map. I'm going to explain some of the counters here, some of the tokens here, some of the concepts of the game as well. Now, the reason why I'm not going to do like a playthrough, or I'm not going to kind of do a how to play, is that this game is fairly complex. And I'm very surprised that GMT has marked this as a 5 complexity as far as, their scale of 1 to 9. It's a 5. And to be honest, I found this, now maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just getting stupider or something. I found this more difficult to wrap my head around than other coin series games. So I did make the mistake when I did the unboxing of it. I said, "Oh, hey, maybe this is going to be one of those easier coin games to get into to learn how to play, kind of like Cuba Libre is." You can play Cuba Libre usually in about a couple hours, 2, 3. I mean, even if you go like full scenario, about 3 hours. And so I said, "Oh, hey, I think this might be an easy one to learn." No, it's not super difficult. I mean, I don't want anybody to get the impression that, oh my gosh, this is just super hard to figure out. But it's got a lot of stuff going on, and the battle portion of the game has a lot of complexities to it that they're a little unusual. Now, I'm not saying these are bad things. I'm just saying I think that the 5 on a scale of 1 to 9 is a little bit low. I would think this is more along the lines of about a 7. So that is just kind of my thought process here. So I have almost the entire board in here on in the shot. And once again, you can tell my camera is pretty high up there to get all of this in. I am going to actually zoom in a little bit once I kind of go through the board here. So anyway, obviously the premise of this game is the fall of Roman Britain. So there are a variety of different scenarios in it. So you can have a scenario, it's like the full, long scenario, where Rome still controls Britannia. Whereas you also have scenarios that can range all the way up to, well, Roman control has basically ended, and you have independent factions all vying for control. And very, very interesting. I was surprised at the number of scenarios there actually are in the book, and that was very cool. I was very, very happy for that. So real quick, we're going to take a look at the rules of play. I'm just going to kind of show the book off a little bit. And it is, I didn't bust out any other coin games to take a look at the core rule book, but I did feel as if it was a little bit longer than some of the other coin books. Now, I can tell you for certain that the playbook that comes with this is definitely, I think it's the longest playbook of any of the coin series. Now, Pendragon is volume 8 in the series, in the Counterinsurgency series from GMT. Interestingly enough, there really isn't counterinsurgency in this game, unless I guess you want to consider, raiders from, coming by sea as insurgents, but I wouldn't consider it that. All right, so just kind of looking through real quick. Once again, nice rule book. There are plenty of examples of play. And just moving right along. One other thing that I will point out too is this has a very, very high solitaire suitability. Okay, so here are the scenarios, right? So we've got Barbarian Conspiracy, Petty Tyrants, The Harder They Fall, and basically the full length. And then on the back, it's showing the map with the setup for pretty much the full game. Anyway, I was going to say the suitability for solitaire play is a 9 out of 9 for Pendragon, and I would agree with that because usually the coin series, I shouldn't say usually, the coin series always utilizes these kind of Let me get a sip here. The coin series utilizes flowcharts, and I will show you those in just a moment. And honestly, I think they were pretty much the most convoluted is a negative word. I don't mean to say anything negative about the solitaire flowcharts. Just they seem really detailed and they seem to play out really well. Very, very cool. Very, very cool how, and of course, that's been the case from the beginning of the coin series, is that you will have the ability to play them solitaire. Of course, obviously enough, any of the coin games play best with the full complement of players. So this is going to play best with 4 players. Just like Colonial Twilight was for 2 players. Played best with 2 players. All right, so we're going to kind of take a look at the playbook. And I have to point out, you should definitely read the rule book and then read the playbook. Now, I like the playbooks. I love GMT playbooks because it always teaches me something I didn't know about that era. And I'm the first to admit I am not. I'm fairly well versed with like the Roman Empire, the fall of Rome, not necessarily as it pertains to the British Isles, though. So, anyways, one thing I do want to point out with the playbook is that the rules are pretty good. The rules are pretty clear, but when you read through the playbook, a lot of the concepts of this game become much easier to pick up. Very, very important, because I know a lot of times, a lot of gamers when they're playing GMT games, they jump into the rule book. They're like, okay, cool, I'm ready, let's go, and they don't necessarily delve too far into the playbook, except at their own leisure. Oh wow, I'm really enjoying this game. I think I'm going to read through the playbook. In this case here, I'd certainly recommend that you read through the entire playbook. And the reason is, so here there's a multiplayer example of play. And look at how many pages this goes. This is going to go through a lot of detail. And it's sort of like, oh, okay, so that's how that works? Oh, got it. Okay, now I understand. See, look at this. This is still the playthrough. Now we get an orientation for the non-players. So, of course, you can play with fewer than 4 players and just have kind of non-player characters utilized to take on the other factions that you aren't playing. You and your friend or friends are not playing. And it talks about how is that NPC, how is that AI going to utilize the various cards? Are they going to do commands, feats? Are they going to take the event? So this is, once again, this is a really detailed example. Then it talks about the victory conditions, which is kind of interesting because the victory conditions in the rule book are sort of like, well, yeah, this. They don't seem to be kind of, I don't want to say they're not fleshed out. It just sort of, I kind of dug this chart here as opposed to when you were looking at just in the rule book. All right, then we have the Pendragon Chronicles, talking about various aspects. Then, what I thought was awesome, here, let's get to that, are the event notes. Now, whenever you're playing a card-driven game from GMT, you're usually going to have a playbook, and the playbook is going to go into detail about each of the event cards. What I thought was really cool is for each of the event cards, you'll kind of have a tip, some tips about how to play that, and it gives you the background on what does that card represent. So usually, most times in the playbooks, you'll get the background, you get the historical information about the cards, but not tips on how you should be able to utilize them. I thought that was very cool. And every card gets that rundown. Pretty nice. And what are we looking at? 70 pages, I think, is what this... No, 72. So then you've got some other additional kind of info at the back. Sources. Kind of a gazetteer. A gazetteer, I think. Isn't that how it's pronounced? And then pronunciation guide. Yeah, lots of luck for me with that. All right, so like I said, then we got the playbook. Each of the players will also receive one of these cards here. This is a player aid, so it's going to show each of the 4 factions and what commands and feats they have available to them. So we've got the Civitates, I don't know. Come on, you guys know I can barely speak English. Got the Saxons, the Scotti, as well as the Ducks. Yes, the Ducks. And every time I see that, I keep thinking from Unforgiven, the Duck of Death. So when Gene Hackman's talking about the dime novelist, and he's like, the Duck of Death. So each of the players is going to have a copy of this, and we'll take actually a closer look at these when I zoom in. Then there are a couple of copies of these sheets here. So on one side, it's going to talk about the epic round, the epoch round, and then battles. And the epoch round is kind of how you're going to, it's like scoring as well as a timing element. So if you're playing like one of the short scenarios, then you're looking at 2 epoch cards. You're going to, because these get shuffled into your deck. So I thought that was kind of cool. All right, so we're going to kind of tour the board here. So we're going to start off down here, and we've got the blue, which are, these are the Britons. So depending on what scenario that you end up playing, the blue and the red are essentially kind of together. So the way it sort of is represented is the blue are the actual Britons. These are the British people. Whereas the red are the Roman forces, the Roman garrisons, the Roman leadership that was in Britain. So if you play like the full scenario, both of these kind of operate together. In fact, the Ducks utilize resources from the Britons. They can utilize resources from the Britons because they're sort of together. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that each of these are not, each faction is not trying to come out on top. It's just that they actually kind of rely on each other. So down here we've got these, and I will show off the different units when I zoom in. So anyway, so these are the Britons, basically down here. Then up here, we've got the Scotty, which are coming down from Scotland to raid into Britain. So we've got their units are kept over here. Then up here, we've got the Romans, the Ducks. So they're located up here. And then we've got down at the bottom, I'm going to push that up a little bit. We've got the Saxons. And I've got some counters and things like that spread all around. Now, along the different edges of the board here, starting from about here on this edge and running around it to about here on this edge, is kind of a scoring track. You can kind of see it off to the right here. And depending on the scenario, you're going to be looking at tracking resources, reputation, renown, I should say, as far as with the different factions. And you will have certain areas that are going to be highlighted depending on the scenario that, okay, now you're in a victory condition area for that faction. And that's going to change depending on the scenario that you're utilizing. So, and that is kind of marked along the sides of this track, but I can't really move this around too much. Let's see, can we get a little bit of the red down here without me knocking over the camera? Yeah, right here. See, this is kind of what I'm talking about as far as on the board itself, on the game board. So, and you can see there's some different counters, there's different markers and things like that. So that is that area here. Then of course we've got Britain and Scotland. So we've got the map here where you can have different units, so on and so forth. I will zoom in and show you that. We've got the different oceans, the seas, I guess we should say really, that are surrounding Britain. Because what'll happen is the Scotty actually come and they invade from basically these two seas here, whereas the Saxons invade from these seas here, which obviously enough would make sense, right? All right, so then we've got some different tokens, we've got different counters, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do here, let me zoom in. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Yeah, I think we should be okay. We should be cool like that. That way I won't have to kind of like be like, oh yeah, so this is what that looks like. All right, so just kind of taking a look at some of the cards here. So each of the factions will receive a card that tells them it's going to have a, it's kind of like their special pivotal event that they can utilize. And they can utilize this card to trump any card that's currently in play. Now, if a player decides, and these are like one-shots, right? These are one-shot cards that can be utilized. And once you play it, then it's done. But the thing is, you'll actually have at the bottom, so for an example, the Scotty shows here that it can actually trump the other factions. So say for an example, we've got the Roman player, the Ducks player, decides, hey, I'm going to play this card. This is going to be my my pivotal event. I've been hanging on to this. I want to play this right now. Well, it is possible for the Scotty player to trump that card. So it would actually replace the Roman card, and then this becomes the card. So if you have played other coin games in the series, you know that a lot of things depend on the deck, on the event card deck. And like just about every other coin game, it is asymmetrical. There is asymmetrical play to this game. And the way I kind of look at it, there's way more things that are asymmetrical in this than I seem to recall in some of the other coin games. But we always know that you're going to play a card, and you're also going to have a second card that's going to be showing what's the next card coming up. All right, so this could be the active card. That's the card that's going to be coming. And you have to utilize a lot of different things, a lot of different strategy in this game, because you're not going to be able to sit there and play every turn. That's one of the other aspects of a coin game. If you're not familiar with the coin series, is you really have two factions get to do something on a turn. Now, two factions don't have to. You can actually have more than one faction, or I should say more than two factions decide they're going to pass. So what'll happen is that, let's say for an example, this is the first card. So it's going to tell us, okay, well, the Scotty player has first dibs on taking their action if they're eligible. So let's say we're just beginning the game, everybody's eligible. Let me zoom back out, because right over here is where we see, okay, so what's going on here? So you're going to have these tokens here that represent each of the factions. So shows all the eligible factions. This is how you would start off. So the Scotty player decides, okay, what's the next card coming up? Oh, I get to go first next turn 2. And of course, you're looking at the events, because the events are going to do different things. A lot of times there's like red text that'll tell you, okay, well, this is a prerequisite. You have to have this in place before you can actually play this event. This isn't coin games are not like, say, Twilight Struggle, where you have a hand of cards. It's not like 1960 where you have a hand of cards. These cards all come out, and they're one card kind of per turn will come out, and it's a kind of a shared card. So as an example here, the Scotty player would go first. So the Scotty player right off the bat could say, okay, well, they could pass, and depending on who they are, by passing, I keep knocking this little token off, so I'm going to move that too. Depending on who they are, they might get something. So Britons get resources, Ducks get resources. But for an example, maybe this was a really cool event that the Scotty player wants to have take place. So they may decide, hey, I'm going to take a pass on doing anything for this card here. So then, okay, it'd be like, all right, so then next player would be the Saxons. So the Saxon player can say, okay, well, I decide, all right, I want to do something this turn. So one aspect of the coin series that's actually pretty cool is that the more an active player does on their turn, the more the next active player on their turn is going to get to do as well. And on the flip side of that is the less the active player does in their turn, the less the player following them is going to be able to get done in the turn. And it's kind of cool how it operates that way. So as an example, let's say we've got the Saxon player, and the Saxon player says, okay, well, I want to do something. I don't want to be sitting back waiting. So they say, okay, well, let's say this event isn't anything good for them. So they say, all right, so what I'm going to do is I've got the option of, I can either just do a command, and each of the factions have this card. So, as I mentioned before, it's always asymmetrical. The coin games are always asymmetrical. each faction has different things they can usually do. A lot of times they've got stuff they share that they can all do. So, for an example, the Saxons can raid, they can return, they can march, they can go into battle. Those are the commands. Those are commands that they get. So, if, for an example, the Saxons decide they're going to do a command, then the next player who would be up would be the Ducks. Now they could decide, well, I'm going to pass, because actually passing allows them to get a resource. Or they could say, okay, well, I really want to do this. So what happens here is, well, okay, so if this faction here decided they were only doing a command, that was it, then all the second faction can do is do a limited command. So looking at the Ducks, and usually like limited is talking about like marching and stuff like that. So anyway, so here are the different commands that the Ducks would have. Now, for an example, if the Saxon player decided, okay, so I'm going to do a command and a feat, then the next player could choose to, okay, well, they can do an event or limited command. If the Saxon player had decided, all right, so I'm going to do the event, because usually the events are a big deal, especially if it's good for your faction, then the second player who would be doing something would be able to do a command as well as add a feat. So it's kind of interesting. So you got the commands and they got the feat. So remember, it's important if you go first and you want to kind of hamstring your opponents, knowing that, you know, really there's only going to be another opponent getting to do something after you get to kind of phase in your turn. The less you do, the less they can do. So it's pretty wild how that works that way. So basically, so what would happen then is, so for that turn, you would move these guys into the ineligible factions. So you would move them right there. So then on the next turn, the only factions that can do anything are these two factions. So sometimes it gets to the point where it's like, okay, so there's only really two factions able to, it doesn't always break down to like, okay, so it's always going to be these guys, because you can still pass. So what happens is you get, let's say he passes, all right, so then he says, okay, I'm taking the event. The Scotty player says, I'm playing the event. So then what happens next turn, boom, got these three Scotty players ineligible for that turn. Now remember, you're still only going to get two factions, but that's why it's so important for players to be watching these cards and always look at what's not only the active card, but also what's the next card in line. Because if it's an event and it's going to work in your favor, and if you're going first or if you're second and the first faction's already taken they've done something in this turn, so you know, okay, well, they're not going to be eligible, so it's going to come down to me. So there's a lot of kind of, you know, paying attention. If you can't pay attention in a game, you're not going to be in good shape playing Pendragon. All right, so that's kind of how that sequence of play will work. Also want to point out, because you have these raiders in both the Scotty and the Saxons, one thing that's also interesting is that they invade from specific oceans, and that you can have these oceans being patrolled or they may not be patrolled. And the aspect with that is, of course, if you're playing like the full game, well, yes, then the oceans are all patrolled. If you're playing where it's gotten to the point where everything is fractioned apart and the Romans no longer are controlling all of Britain, then you'll find that, okay, well, you don't have some of these oceans being patrolled. It makes it easier for these raiders. Also, the raiders have to worry about different forts, things like that. Whereas these are things that the Romans and the Britons don't deal with. They don't go raiding. All right, let's zoom back in. All right, to kind of get a look at the different areas of the board. All right, so you got these different areas in the board. So we've got, these are hills. This is kind of clear, and then this color here is fear, I think it's pronounced. So one of the interesting things here is all of these different factions, they have the same kind of, except for the Scotty and the Saxons have these raiders. Everybody else is like cubes. So plus even the Saxons and the Scotty also have cubes. So I'll give you an example. So for the Britons, this counter, this token here can represent a town or a hill fort. So you've got towns, hill forts. For the Romans, this actually represents a fort. For the Scotty and the Saxons, these actually represent settlements. So there's different ways, as I mentioned before, this is, in this asymmetrical game, the victory conditions for the factions are all asymmetrical as well. So the Scotty are looking at like renown, fame, from going and raiding and plundering and all this other stuff, plus settling in different areas of Britain. The Saxons, same kind of thing. The Saxons are looking at, they're looking at more towards the settlements as opposed to the raiding, but they still raid as well. The Romans are looking to kind of just be able to hang on and keep control and have resources. And then with the Britons, their victory conditions are more really based on how much of the population of Britain do they control. So pretty cool stuff. So then on the board itself, you'll see each of these areas are going to have these gold cubes. So these gold cubes are basically prosperity. So when the Saxons, when the Scotty come and raid, they can steal away these prosperity cubes. So they're basically plundering. You can also have the Romans and the Britons, I should say. They can also take plunder, but not as often. And usually they're stealing plunder back away from other armies that are trying to make off with the prosperity cubes. Then you'll also see each of the areas has a number. It might be a little tough to see. That is the population of the town, the settlements, whatever, that are here. Population of the area. And the population can grow, and the population can also get wiped out. So that's pretty cool as far as with that too. So we have these battles. So let's show off some of the different counters here. So we've got kind of like these pieces of pie, or almost shields, whatever you want to consider them. And those represent raiders. Now the cubes represent troops of some sort. So for the Britons, the light blue is kind of militia, kind of levies, and the blue represent trained soldiers. Whereas the Romans, their red, represent cavalry. It's always cavalry. And one of the things with the Romans and their cavalry is they have a limitation. They're not going to continually be able to recruit cavalry, because keeping in mind, these were the garrisons. These were the troops who were keeping control of Britain, and they are not going to be replaced. So what'll happen here is, as the Romans, the ducks, lose cavalry, they'll get some back, but some of it will remain out of play. Now, I don't have this set up in any sort of way as far as any kind of scenario, anything like that. I just wanted to show off some of the counters and some of the other stuff as well. So we get dice. We've got different kinds of dice. So we've got these 8-sided dice, but they're only numbered 1 through 4. So really, these are 4-sided dice. And these dice are used by the Raiders, the Scotty, and the Saxons. Excuse me, to determine how many of these Raider units they will receive when they do a raid action. And that number can be reduced by forts along the coast, or if those oceans are being patrolled or not. So there's quite a bit of randomness to the ability of both the Saxons and the Scotty to raid. Although sometimes, the player can get a bunch of these raiders. Now, these pie or shield shaped tokens here, units here, which of course the Scotty have the same, they count as a half. So 2 of these would equal 1 of these. Now, militia are weaker than the trained units. Now, the black cubes and the green cubes represent war bands. So one of the aspects of both the Saxons and the Scotty are they're actually trying to settle in available parts of Britain and establish themselves with their own little these almost look like fortress indicators, almost like a castle with 4 towers. But as I mentioned before, they represent different things depending on which faction. So they could represent settlements for the Saxon and the Scotty, or they could represent towns or hill forts depending on the color. Town, hill fort. Or for the ducks in red, they represent forts right here, just like that. And you will see, actually should have been over there. You'll see each area will have kind of a light colored outline and then a dark colored outline. So the light colored outline is usually where like hill forts will go. And then like I should say the darker one is where like you'll see the forts go, I should say towns. No, I had that right. So on the board, you actually will see what should go there. Then you also have cities. So you got cities, which are these big circles here. It's got the big circle here, and then we've got down here Londinium, which of course is off screen. But this big circle, so you've got Londinium, which of course ends up becoming London in the future. So you'll have these as well as prosperity here. And this can get a little tricky when you've got these cubes and these little shields, because as you get a lot of stuff in these different areas, it can get kind of hard to squeeze everything in. It's not horrible, but it does happen. So there are a lot of times you're going to end up having to stack your different cubes as opposed to sitting there and having them sitting there next to each other, because it'll get to the point where it's going to be tough to squeeze everything in. All right, so when you have battles, I'm going to show you on the back here, back of this sheet. This sheet shows the battle information. And there's all different things going on in these battles. You can even have garrisons that are in towns as well as forts, which are actually considered to be units, but they're just not out on the board. So anyway, so you've got battles in that, and the battles you will actually have the ability to ambush. You've got the ability to take units and they evade the attackers, and they're able to go into the towns or the forts. You've got different units fight better in like their home territory, their home kind of territory. So, kind of give you an example, like the cavalry. The cavalry are trying to attack, let's say Scotty forces here. Well, the cavalry isn't necessarily good in the hills, so you've got these six-sided dice, which all have Roman numerals, and you'll roll to see if you can have ambushes. So you could end up having an ambush, and it's going to just basically throw your entire attack off. Because really what it ends up doing most of the time is whoever's going to go first. So let's say, for an example, let's just move these out of here for a sec. Let's say, for an example, we had one Saxon there. Obviously, to be honest, would be pretty unlikely that Saxons are over here, but so you'll have control too. So you'll see control. So whoever's got the most units is considered in control. So where do we got? There we go. No. Yep. So for an example, in this situation here, the Saxon would control this area because they have the most units. So let's say that the cavalry comes moving in here. Normally, the way it would go is, okay, so the attacker removes as many cubes as they've got. Or, for an example, these count as a half. So you would remove those. And then what's left gets to attack, the defender gets to attack the attacker. Well, okay, pretty easy. But there's all these things going on where it would be possible, okay, well, the defender gets to attack first. So, all right, so boom, there's one cavalry gone. Then the attacker gets to, so, and then it would be like, okay, so, well, cavalry still has one. There's all these different things on this chart for the battles. All this different stuff. You've got the pre-battle, you got the field battle, you've got assaults, you've got battle consequences, sieges, talks about the different units, their home terrain. And as you can see, cavalry has absolutely no home terrain. So the Saxons were actually, this darker green is their home turf. The Britons' home turf is this. Although in earlier scenarios, it's not. The Britons actually have to earn that as like their home territory. So anyway, so what'll eventually go on is you'll have these epoch cards that have been shuffled into your event deck. And they'll say, okay, well, there you go. Not a fragmentation. So if you're playing the fragmentation scenario where it's kind of like every faction for themselves, you wouldn't be using this as far as the different epics. So we've got early, late. So you would have, for an example, with the petty tyrants, the ones that's really short, you would be using 2 of these epic cards. So keeps the game from going really, really long. Now, of course, you can play all the epic cards in the entire deck, and that is effectively the long scenario. Even the short scenario is going to take you, when you're first learning how to play, at least 3 hours. It's going to take you at least 3 hours to play this. I would think if you're playing the entire scenario, the full length scenario, you're probably looking at about 8 hours. About 8 hours to play. But the big thing with with Pendragon is, I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. Big thing with Pendragon is the different ways that these factions operate, as well as how they win. So the Saxons and the Scotty are more concerned with jumping in here with the raiders, making off with gold, and coming back, cashing in the prosperity cubes as their plunder. Plus, of course, it's also important for them to get settlements. Now, when you, because I can't really, I guess I can zoom back out a bit. As I mentioned before, each of these factions are asymmetrical. You'll see that, for an example, like the Scotty, if I pull this down a little bit, they don't have the ability to actually create that many settlements. Grand total of 6 in the full game. And they can't even try to win the game unless they have at least 4 settlements. Now, if I push this up here, you'll see the Saxons actually have 12 settlements. The Romans, 10 forts. The Britons have both towns and hill forts. And of course, these areas here are just loaded down with all of these various markers, all these wooden cubes and fortresses and so on and so forth. So I just didn't put them all out here and load all these up. And sometimes, like, it's kind of tough. Like the Saxons have a lot. You're kind of like squeezing up, trying to squeeze them all in here at one time. And as I mentioned, sometimes the map does get a bit cluttered when there's a lot of units in a location. It makes it kind of difficult to see where are they, what's going on. It's not terrible. It happens more often than not with, like, for an example, the cities. So like Londinium makes it a little tough when you've got all these, you've got your resources in here. You've got your, let's say it's just for an example here. Then maybe we've got some cavalry. And then we get attacked. So as you, like I said, it gets to the point where it's kind of like, okay, that's pretty cluttered, but doesn't happen too often. And like I said, it's mainly really in the cities where it's kind of a bit of a mess. Anyway, so you'll continue through the cards, and when you get to these epic cards, you will see, is there an automatic victory? Did one of these factions automatically get a victory? Now, it is kind of interesting when you're playing with those non-player AIs. Those non-player AIs can win. So, kind of funny that you got beat by the flowchart, but it can happen. You don't have to necessarily have to be a player to end up being the winner. Lots of stuff going on. Like I said, I'm just touching on a lot of the aspects of Pendragon. I'm not going through all of the details, especially the battle stuff. The battle stuff can be not overwhelming, but just a little bit different. And but I think it's cool. I like it. I actually really, really like this game. I really do. I gotta be honest though, I only played the short scenarios because there was no way. There was absolutely no way. Not that I'm not interested, and it's possible that I might actually try to set this up. I've got another table down here in the Duct Tape Studios that I don't necessarily use. So I would maybe consider setting this up and trying to play just a full solitaire game. Just with all the 4 factions, just the big full scenario. Might be a little overwhelming. I don't know. Anyway, all right. So that in itself is pretty much Pendragon. As I mentioned, you're going to continue on until you get to a point where either time will expire because of you're only playing, let's say, a shorter scenario that's got 2 of the epic cards, or you're going to get to a point where you're going to play one of the epic cards and you're going to have somebody with an automatic victory. So pretty cool. Really enjoyed it. I really enjoy, with the coin series, some of the stuff that I really dig happen to be the fact that I think it's kind of cool that you see what's coming up, because you've got the active card and then you got the card that's coming up in the future. I kind of think that's kind of cool. So it kind of, I know there are some folks who don't care for it, especially because of the events, because like, well, you shouldn't know that event's coming up. I don't know about that. That doesn't really bother me that much. I think it adds in a really big extra wrinkle for you to sit there and try to figure out, okay, all right, so I really should be doing something on my turn, this turn, but I really want to get that event, so if I just pass on this turn, I'll still be eligible next turn. Lots of stuff going on. Now, what'll happen when you have new players to the coin series is, of course, that leads to a bunch of analysis paralysis. So, as I mentioned before, I can't understand why GMT gave this a 5 out of 9 as far as complexity, because I felt that this is one of the more complex coin games that I've actually played. So I would certainly recommend, I don't want to say that Pendragon, The Fall of Roman Britain, shouldn't be someone's first coin game. Because it is good. It is really good. It's excellent. Don't get me wrong. It's excellent, I should say. But it can be kind of overwhelming if you've never played a coin game. So what I would probably recommend is that, it's easy for me to say, well, get somebody who's played all the different coin games and various different coin games to, play with you and kind of give you the heads up and kind of show you the ropes and things like that. It's kind of tough to say that when a lot of people out there are like, wow, I want to pick up Pendragon because I can play it solitaire, because I don't have other players around who, can get into the coin series as deeply as the buyer wants to, or who's even interested in the subject material, or maybe they don't even play with other gamers. Maybe they are solitaire gamers themselves. Pendragon will be a little difficult to kind of get into. I'm not saying it can't be done, obviously. It's not going to be something somebody's going to jump right into and be like, oh, yes. Oh, obviously enough. Easy. That's actually another reason why I wasn't going to do a whole playthrough in that, because there's just so many different little things going on. Little things mechanically. Like all the different commands, different feats, things like that. So yes, it'd be easy for me to say, oh yeah, well, if you got somebody who plays coin all the time, who could show you the ropes, I would recommend that. Or, oh, well, why don't you play some Cuba Libre first to ease yourself into the system, then jump into Pendragon. Don't want to say that either, because honestly, I don't even know if Cuba Libre is around, if it's available from GMT. I'm pretty sure it's sold out. And you would probably be paying top dollar on the secondary market. And if you wait long enough where it's like, oh, okay, well, I've played this other, lighter coin game, I'm ready for Pendragon, then it might turn out that Pendragon sold out. So you don't want to wait on that either. The only thing I can say is my only knock on the game is just little bit of the complexity issue. That's about it. I think it's really, really good. I don't think it's for every wargamer out there. I do think that obviously enough, you want to have a full complement of 4 players. The flowchart's pretty cool, but still never represents another player at the table. And one of the reasons why I'm never super keen on kind of like AI, such as what's in Pendragon, is the AI doesn't usually make human mistakes. You know, it's a little difficult for the game to program mistakes into a flowchart. But anyway, overall, I definitely give Pendragon: The Fall of Roman Britain from GMT Games a 9.5 out of 10. It is that good. It is really, really good. It is really meaty, and it is a subject that isn't really gamed all that much. Yes, I know there are various different war games out there over the years that do tackle the Roman Britain, but not a ton of them. So definitely big thumbs up. Really dig Pendragon: Fall of Roman Britain. Anyway, that is it for today's show. Pretty big show, almost an hour and a half. Hopefully YouTube doesn't mess up the stream again. Some reason it's like every day now when I do a stream, there's parts cut out. There's stuff missing. So for an example, this is going to run about an hour and a half. When it finishes rendering, it may say it's an hour 10 minutes, and it's like, where are the other 20 minutes? And it's not like right off the end. So hopefully that doesn't happen today. But thankfully, I am recording the episodes now, so I just have to, if there's a problem, I just have to upload the saved video. Only problem is I end up losing a bunch of viewers that way. Original viewers. So when you are not watching The Daily Dope, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. I will be back tomorrow. I will be reviewing... let me go dig it out. Come on. I will be reviewing Torg Eternity from Ulysses North America. So until then, enjoy your hump day. And as always, thank you so much for watching.